Excellent. Good evening, everyone. We're going to get started. We're all set and ready now. So at this point in time, we're going to ask we'll all just come to order. And with that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to call the Town of Magonia Park regular Town Council meeting of March 2nd, 2021 to session. Roll call, please.
Mayor Albury.
Here.
Vice Mayor Johnson. Here. Councilman Green. Here. Councilman McConnell.
Here.
And Councilman Smith.
Here.
Thank you so much. We'll allow Vice Mayor Johnson to join the dais, and then we'll stand for our invocation. Okay, just while you're standing, let us stand for our invocation, please. Most kind and gracious Father, we thank you again for this day that you've given us, and we thank you for all of the blessings we've enjoyed. We pray and ask now that as we enter into this moment in which we come to represent and to act on behalf of those that we've been elected and appointed to serve, we pray that all things will be done in decently in order, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen. Our pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. You may be seated. Okay, we have our agenda before us, and we'd like to thank all of those who are online attending the meeting with us. We ask that you just follow along. I think the agenda is posted on the website, so feel free to join us and follow along with us. At this point in time, we're going to attend to our agenda. We have those items before, so are there any additions, deletions, or substitutions to the agenda? Seeing that there are none, motion, please. Motion has been made by Councilman Smith and seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson to approve the agenda. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It is carried. Thanks so much. And of course, on the consent agenda, we have no items for this particular meeting. So we'll go on our agenda. Our next item is item 4, and I don't know if the presenters are present.
She's on the phone.
Okay, I'm sorry, by way of Zoom. Thanks so much. Alrighty, so we do have a presentation. This, of course, is Living with Raccoons, as presented by Angela Barker. She's a certified wildlife biologist there at the Wildlife Impact Management section. And so what we're going to do, she's on the phone and she's going to give a presentation. So we ask, after a presentation, if you have questions throughout, then we'll have those questions answered as well. Okay, so at this time, Ms. Barker.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Town Council, thank you for your time this evening. Over the past several weeks, we've had numerous requests in the community speaking about protection from wildlife, raccoons in particular. And in response to those requests and concerns, we've reached out to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission for tips on how individual property owners can discourage intrusions from raccoons. Ms. Angelina Barker is on the phone. She is a certified wildlife biologist, biological scientist 4 with the Florida Fish and Wildlife. We have her on the line to do a brief presentation and to field some questions from you. Angelina, are you there?
I am.
Go right ahead.
Well, good evening, and thanks again for having me. Again, my name is Angelina Barker. I'm a wildlife biologist with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. For those that may not be familiar with FWC, we are the state wildlife regulatory agency. We have constitutional authority to regulate fish and wildlife resources throughout the state of Florida. Most people know FWC from hunting and fishing, but the agency is a lot more than that. We do coral reef research, to removing pythons out of the Everglades, to land management, to enforcing fish and wildlife regulations, to the part of the agency that I'm involved in, which is fairly small. My job is to help assist the public with conflicts that they may have with wildlife. So I'm talking to you today from my home just outside of Tampa. I'm sorry I can't be there with you due to COVID, but I'm hoping that I can take a few minutes of your time to talk to you today about raccoons. So I know everyone knows what a raccoon looks like, but just for argument's sake, they're a small mammal. They have grizzled fur. They kind of look like a small bear with a ringed tail and a mask across their face. They typically weigh anywhere from 10 to 30 pounds. They are very common in urban areas across Florida, and they are a native species to the state. We like to call raccoons generalists, which means they can live just about anywhere, and they can eat just about anything. So they'll eat both plant material and animal material when they're in the wild. So think of things like acorns or grasses or bird eggs or dead animals. But in urban areas, they can eat really anything that's available. So think roadkill, garbage, pet food, bird seed, livestock food, anything that's available to them, they can survive on. Now, in a natural environment, they usually have a home range of 1 to 3 square miles, but where there's plentiful food, like urban environments, you can have as many as 100 raccoons per square mile, which is a lot of raccoons. When they are being artificially fed by people through garbage and pet food and bird seed, that can cause them to have more young, and that can cause densities to increase. People often have conflicts with raccoons in urban areas because of those food resources they just mentioned. Garbage, pet food, bird seed are attractive to raccoons. They pull raccoons into urban areas, and then we can have conflicts with them. And that may be true even if folks aren't intending to target raccoons. So let's say they're putting their garbage out the night before trash day without the intention of raccoons getting into it. If it's not in a secure can, let's say it's just out in the bag by the side of the road, that's enough. That's enough to attract raccoons in and potentially have them cause conflicts. One of the best ways people can reduce conflicts with not just raccoons, but really any wildlife is by securing those food items I just mentioned. By keeping garbage secure in a garage or a shed until the morning of trash day instead of the night before, that gives wildlife and raccoons a lot less opportunity to get into it. Pet food is also a huge attractant for wildlife, including raccoons. So we are encouraging residents to feed pets indoors. And if they absolutely must feed pets outside, it's feeding them at one time of day, monitoring them while they're eating, and bringing the food in immediately after they're done, not leaving food out for copious amount of times or leaving food out overnight, because that allows wildlife to get into it. The other big concern we have with raccoons, especially when they're living around people, is disease. Now, a lot of folks will say, if I see a raccoon out during the day, that must mean that it's sick, and that's an old wives' tale. Raccoons will come out during daylight hours if they have young to feed, if they're not being pressured by people, or if their food's coming out during the day. And raccoons carrying diseases is not super common. It's about 1 of every 200 raccoons has rabies, for example. But there are other diseases that raccoons can carry that can be transmitted to pets, like mange or like distemper. And so again, those food attractants I mentioned earlier are really important to keep them secure, to keep raccoons not only from having conflicts with people, but having conflicts with our pets as well. One of the other ways to prevent conflicts with raccoons is by hazing them. So hazing is a term you usually hear associated with fraternities. With raccoons, but what I mean by hazing is scaring them away. Just making them feel uncomfortable and unwanted and letting them know it's not really okay for them to be hanging out in someone's backyard or in their driveway. Usually hazing is pretty easy. You can throw rocks or throw sticks at the animal. The idea is not to injure it. The idea is to give it a negative to give them a negative experience, and let them know that hanging around people is not in their best interest. One really great way to do this, though, especially at night or possibly when you're not home, if you've got a raccoon that's accessing your yard, just by using a motion-activated sprinkler. You can get these online or at home goods stores. It's usually one sprinkler head that attaches to your garden hose, and you can place it strategically in your yard where you know the animal's coming. And what happens is when it detects motion, it gives off a really fast burst of water. Most of the time, it sprays the animal right in the face. Raccoons really don't like that. Neither do coyotes, neither do rabbits, neither do opossums, neither do your neighbors. So you need to be careful about where you put it, but that's a really good deterrent to use on a property, especially when you're not home or if it's after dark, to help keep the animals from coming on your property. But if those food attractants remain, even if you're using something like that sprinkler, the raccoons are going to continue to visit. Lastly, I know I didn't have a lot of time, but one other thing I really quickly want to mention. It is illegal to feed raccoons in Florida, whether it's intentional or unintentional. So if you're perhaps feeding a cat colony and you're targeting cats, but raccoons are showing up, that's illegal. You can report that to FWC. We take those reports seriously. It's illegal to feed raccoons in Florida for a couple of reasons. One is when they start associating people with food, they can become aggressive. And raccoons are pretty smart. They figure that out pretty quickly. Where people mean food, they can get aggressive towards people. The other reason goes back to what I mentioned a few moments ago, which is disease. If you think for a moment of large feeding stations, let's say for cats, if raccoons are coming in and one of those animals, whether it's a cat or a raccoon, is shedding a virus like rabies, it's very easy to be transmitted to animals throughout that feeding station. And all of a sudden, you may have a localized disease outbreak, which would be really bad, not only for the animals in the area, but for the people in the area. If anyone suspects someone feeding raccoons, and by the way, it's not just raccoons, it's alligators, foxes, coyotes, bears, although I know you don't have bears over there in Palm Beach County. If you suspect someone is feeding one of these animals, you can call FWC. You can remain anonymous. One of our law enforcement officers will come out. Typically, we try to educate folks first without giving citations, and most of the time, education is all it takes in behavior change. So I kind of went through everything quickly in a nutshell. I'm happy to take any questions.
Question.
Okay, Councilman Smith, go right ahead.
Hey, good evening. Thank you for enlightening me, and I've learned a lot. But there's a couple questions that on the tip of my head that I must ask you. So I want to dispel myths. And these are real scenarios, so I'm not the expert per se, but maybe you can kind of guide us up here on the test. You talked about hazing, using water. Raccoon does not like the hazing. This is a real life situation. I have a neighbor. Neighbor has a swimming pool. And these raccoons love, for whatever reason, dive in that swimming pool. So can you kind of clarify that on water and swimming pool? Because in our municipalities, a lot of residents that do have swimming pools. And my last question, I'll not in particular order. You talked about food of choice. You gave some things that, and I'm reading the pamphlet that you're also giving us, that they like to eat, and they've got domesticated where they're eating our food. But I have fruit trees in my yard, mango trees and stuff, and for some reason I think they're hanging out eating that fruit. So can you clarify on that too?
Sure, so I'll start with the pool. You're absolutely right. Raccoons are attracted to pools. One of the things they do in pools, and it's rather disgusting, but they defecate in pools. It's a defense mechanism for the raccoon to defecate in water. That way the predator won't smell them coming to the area. So you're right. Pools are attractive to raccoons, and they do like to, I wouldn't say swim, but they do like to use pools. The motion-activated sprinkler, where it's different, is it's giving off a quick burst of water, kind of like a sprinkler on a golf course. So it's quickly turning on and spraying the raccoon in the face, rather than being a tepid body of water that it's entering. It's usually the action of the sprinkler turning on and spraying quickly that gets their attention, which is negative, which drives them away. For folks that, and I do want to address that since you brought up the point on pools, for folks that have raccoons defecating in pools, that's something they probably want to address pretty quickly by either putting up screen lanai or using some other type of fencing, or if there's a specific spot to the pool that they're coming to, they can put that sprinkler up in front of it to prevent the raccoons from coming into the pool. There is a parasite that can be transmitted from the raccoon feces to people, and chlorine does not kill it. There is more information on the Department of Health's website about that for any folks that are having that issue with raccoons. It's called raccoon roundworm. One other point I want to touch on before I go to the fruit trees, because I realized I did not talk about this, are regulations. The state defines nuisance pretty narrowly. So nuisance is defined by an animal's behavior, not by a species. So you can have an individual animal that is a nuisance, and the state defines that by an animal that is about to cause or has caused property damage, is a threat to public safety, or is an annoyance in, under, or upon a building. If a raccoon meets any one of those definitions, the landowner has the right to remove that animal if they wish. So I'll use an example. Let's say a landowner has a raccoon in their attic. They are allowed to remove that animal as a nuisance. Once they have that animal captured, let's say they hire a trapper, trapper puts up a trap in the attic, captures a raccoon. The landowner has a couple of options on what to do with that animal. They can release it on site, which is probably the best move for the animal and for the landowner. And in this example of a raccoon in the attic, simply securing the attic before you let the animal go and letting it go on property is the best move for the animal in most cases. You can also relocate the animal within the county of capture on 40 contiguous acres with the landowner's permission. That's typically hard to find. Most landowners will not allow nuisance animals to be located on their property from a disease standpoint and from a nuisance standpoint. And the third option is to euthanize it. For the fruit trees that you mentioned, fruit trees are absolutely attractive to raccoons as well. I'm glad you brought that up. When fruit is ripe, raccoons will climb the trees for the fruit, or they will come to the base of the tree where the fruit is and eat the fruit there. For landowners that have fruit trees, you have a couple of options to help keep raccoons out of that. The easiest is, although the most tedious, picking up the fallen fruit that's off the ground. Another option is to put electric fencing at the base of the tree fairly low to prevent the raccoons from climbing the tree and getting into it at all. Electric fencing is not typically expensive, and usually all it takes is one hit for the animal to figure it out that that's not the place for it to be. Although electric fencing can be a little difficult depending on your homeowners association or depending on how urban of an environment you're in, that may not be the best solution.
Anything else, Councilman Smith?
Thank you for clarifying something. I didn't know, but I'm just, like I said earlier, that those are real life situations that I experienced my neighbors there, so I wanted to get some clarity, so thank you for clearing it up. My last question, can raccoons be Baker active? No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding, but it is definitely, and so I'm so glad that we are having an opportunity for you to give the presentation. It is a ongoing problem within the community, so thank you for clearing up my two questions. So, thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Vice Mayor.
Yes, thank you for coming online to give us this update and clarification on raccoon population. I see one of the pointers that says nuisance. Raccoons can be shot on private property during daylight hours with landowner's permission. And please check with the local police department or sheriff's office for firearm ordinance before discharging a firearm. And I just wanted to get clarification between you and also our sheriff that's here. What is the extent of this statement?
Absolutely. Would you like me to answer first, or would you like the sheriff to answer first?
I'd like your answer first.
Sure. So on private property, when a raccoon is meeting that threshold for nuisance that has, as I defined it earlier, a landowner can discharge a firearm to shoot the animal if they can legally discharge a firearm. So per FWC regulations, if you're, let's say, out in Belle Glade and you own 100 acres, that's probably not going to be a problem for you. But if you're in Mangonia Park in an urban environment, that's likely going to be a bit more of a challenge due to local firearm regulations. So we always refer folks who choose to take that option or want to take that option to their county sheriff's office to check firearm regulations before taking that action. And I'll defer to the sheriff on that point.
Just before you defer, I'm just wondering, why does it say daylight hours?
It says daylight hours because there is a permit required to take raccoons at night. It's called a gun and light permit, and that's typically for more rural landowners. That flyer that was sent to you is addressing all raccoon regulations, whether it's in rural or urban environments.
Thank you. Okay, now I'll take the sheriff's comment.
Ma'am, you have to own 1 acre or more to discharge a firearm on your private property in Palm Beach County. Town of Mangonia, I don't see anybody having that large of a property where they could legally shoot a nuisance animal. If somebody's life, like a small child or somebody's, I have to defer on the animals, but if somebody's life's in danger, then yes, you could, under another statute, dispatch the animal by shooting them. It would be better just to call FWC or the local sheriff's department to handle the animal for you, unless something, like I said, somebody's life or physical well-being is in danger. And now have to be a determination the person will have to make and defend later.
Okay, I know we do have a few places in Mangonia Park, very few, where the property is more than an acre.
Right.
And those areas are usually where the raccoons seem to nest. So I'm just want to get clarification that the property owner would have a right to shoot firearm to shoot the raccoons on their own property if the property is more than an acre.
If it meets the statutory requirements and if the town does not have any prohibition against firing a weapon in the town. I know you have an ordinance. I'm basing my response on the county's ordinance, 1 acre or more, and also the safety of others. You have to be very careful when discharging a firearm. That bullet's going to go a lot farther than the limits of your property. So if your life's in danger, I'd dispatch the animal. If not, call FWC or the sheriff's office.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Smith?
Okay, I have one more question, and since FWC is giving their interpretation as well as PDSO, and so I'm kind of clear on that. But clarify, we're talking endangerment, and when I think of endangerment, it's a gray area. We're saying people are not endangered, but endangerment, we have pets. Some of us own pets, so if I'm walking my cat or my dog, and I see a potential threat that my pet or going to be harmed, what are our objectives? What to-dos that we can do? And PBS can answer, FWC can answer, it doesn't matter.
I'm not an animal I can tell you, it's like dealing with bears. Go large, go big, throw your arms up, be very loud, be very boisterous, stomp your feet. Hopefully the animal hasn't been domesticated by people feeding it, and the animal will leave the area. If you can't retreat from the area with your animal because, you know, your animal and your own personal safety is the most important thing. If you're a firearm owner and carrying a firearm, if you and your property are in danger, you also have other statutes in the state of Florida that protect you if you discharge a weapon. But you have to have an overwhelming, I'm really in danger, somebody's going to get hurt, my animal's going to be attacked, I'm going to be bitten, type deal before you start discharging a weapon. And you still have to follow due care. Don't forget where you fire that round, where it goes, you're responsible for that round. So if you fire indiscriminately and it goes into a house, that's not going to absolve you from committing the crime of firing into that house. So that's one of, it's better to get loud, get large, scare the animal away, and if not, retreat with your animal. And if you are in a standoff where, you know, you have the animal standing off with you, I can tell you, I've lived in Florida my whole life. I've faced the problem inside our district. The animals will run from you unless you actually corner them. There's babies involved. They don't want to stick around and fight you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
I'm gonna let.
No, go on.
Okay.
Go down.
I only because of some of the reports that I've received, one in particular, the raccoon charged two adult individuals and they had to run for their life.
Yes, ma'am.
So it wasn't that they were gonna be frightened off by stopping and shouting at them. They charged the adult who was trying to move them on. And another occurrence, a report I know Councilwoman Green gave us of a resident who was riding her bicycle and the raccoon chased her.
Yes, ma'am. And that gives me a good indication that somebody's feeding that animal. We had somebody around this building feeding cats, and that's why we had problems with raccoons historically around here. That's been alleviated, and we now notice we don't have them here. They go wherever there's the easiest food source. That's why I tell people, don't feed wild animals. First of all, you're endangering them. They lose their fear of humans. And second of all, they can turn around and they're wild animals. They can turn around and attack. And what you just said with a raccoon chasing somebody, that's an animal that's been fed and feels comfortable. Maybe they were looking for food and they're used to being fed from humans. We don't know. I don't know what their mindset is when they do things like this.
I 100% agree. That's raccoons chasing people almost always end up being an animal that's been fed somewhere down the line and has lost its fear of people. And running, and I realize one person was on a bike, but running from wildlife, especially from carnivores, is one of the worst things you can do that triggers their prey response to chase, as like a dog would. One thing that may be beneficial to residents if they're worried about having an encounter with a raccoon or a coyote or a fox, let's say while they're out walking their dog, one of the best things they can have with them is bear spray. I'm glad the sheriff mentioned bears, that made me think about it. I would not use bear spray unless the animal was approaching me in a predatory manner. But bear spray has been scientifically proven to prevent grizzly bear attacks. It will prevent a raccoon or a coyote or a fox from engaging with aggressive behavior. You would not want to deploy it unless that animal was within 15 or 20 feet of you. And you want to be mindful of the way the wind is blowing. But what I prefer about bear spray over pepper spray is bear spray comes out in fog about 15 to 20 feet ahead of you. Well, pepper spray, depending on what you buy, tends to come out in a smaller stream. What the bear spray does is have capsaicin pepper in it. It causes the animal's respiratory system to constrict. They physically can't breathe any longer, and they will divert and cut off whatever predatory action they were thinking of making. But again, you kind of want to be mindful which way the wind's blowing, and you would not want to deploy that unless the animal was within 15 or 20 feet and approaching you in a predatory manner.
That's helpful, thank you.
All right.
Is it illegal for a property owner to trap the raccoons and move them out west of town? Is that legal, or is that against the law?
If they were going to trap them as a nuisance, they would need to be meeting one of the nuisance requirements. So about to cause or has caused property damage, is a threat to public safety, or is an annoyance in, under, or upon a building. They can relocate the raccoons within the county of capture on 40 contiguous acres with the landowner's permission. So in Palm Beach County's example, if the landowner in Mangonia Park, let's say, found someone out in Jupiter Farms that had 40 acres and gave written permission, they would legally be able to do that. Public land typically does not allow for relocation of wildlife. So it's typically going to be a private landowner, that landowner trapping would be defined.
I didn't understand.
So if you were to trap them, who would you call to come and get them?
Thank you.
Typically, the landowner would be trapping on their own, or they would be contracting with a private trapper to do that work for them. Sometimes private trappers will give a discounted rate to the landowner if the landowner captures the animal first and calls the trapper to come remove it. But that is a cost. It would be hiring someone, similar to hiring someone to remove rats or mice out of an attic. That's a cost the landowner would incur. FWC typically does not come out and remove nuisance raccoons, but we absolutely will get involved in a case if there's a public safety threat.
Thank you for answering my question.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, Councilwoman Green.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Barker, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Barker, so going back to Councilman McConnell's question, so the only way you could help the residents, us, is if it's a threat to a human. How can you help us dispose of the raccoon? I want to understand this. So we are responsible for disposing of the raccoons ourselves. Am I understanding you?
Correct. The way the regulations are written, landowners are empowered to remove raccoons as a nuisance if they meet that state definition, and are empowered to either euthanize them or to relocate them within the statute. It's the same as if, same with opossums, it's the same with coyotes,
Right.
And other mammals that regulations empower landowners to handle on their own. FWC typically does not get involved in nuisance situations, but in the case of a public safety event, I'll give you an example. We had a raccoon last week that bit 2 women in Broward County. FWC responded to that. We were able to capture that raccoon, turn it over to the Department of Health for testing, and that animal tested positive for rabies. So that was a bit unusual, but that was a public safety event, and that animal was still on site, that we were able to capture it fairly quickly. But for nuisance situations, like a raccoon in your attic, or a raccoon that might be eating your chickens or defecating in your pool, that's typically work that the landowner does on their own, or that they contract with a private trapper to do.
Okay, let me understand. Okay, so the only way Fish and Wildlife can help us is that it is a public safety. That's the only way you can help us.
I'm trying to make sure I understand the question. Is it helping remove the animal itself?
Okay, let me example. I have so many questions. Let me ask you this question first. The young man, and one in particular is Mr. Carl Knight. He's the one that's really having a lot of problems. The raccoons are in his attic. Let me ask you a question. What would entice raccoons to go in a person's attic?
That's a great question. So in the wild, raccoons like to den in cavities in trees. For a home, a cavity in a home and or an attic space is very similar. It's quiet, it's dry, there's not a lot of activity there, there's a constant temperature. So for the raccoon, it's ideal. It reminds them of a cavity in a tree. So if they find a space that's open to an attic or a chimney or a crawl space, they often will take advantage of that.
So to eliminate that problem, all he has to do is find out where the raccoon is coming into his attic and eliminate that and close the hole.
Correct. What he could do is once he knows where the attic is or where the raccoon is entering the attic, and depending on the setup, he could install a device to exclude the raccoon. So that way he wouldn't even have to trap it. Raccoon goes in the attic, comes out, and the device evicts them. It's like a one-way door. So the raccoon can exit, but it can't get back in. That's an easy way to do it without even having to put hands on or capture the raccoon.
Okay, thank you. And another question, let me ask you this. Why are we having, because it's just not Magnolia Park. The situation you referred to, I think we just talked to our town manager, it was just on the news. So it's Broward County and Palm Beach County. Why are we having problems with raccoons? Is it because of the development or what's happening?
Urban areas almost always have problems with raccoons at one point or another. And it always has to do with food. And it always comes back to human-related foods. Where there's a lot of human-related foods available, raccoons can have more offspring because there's more food to support them and their populations increase to where you could have really high densities of raccoons in an environment, like 100 raccoons per square mile, which is kind of insane.
Okay.
It almost always comes back to food. If the human-related foods can be secure, raccoons are going to be forced to go elsewhere to start finding food because those easy food sources won't be available to them. The case in Broward County I mentioned a moment ago with the rabid raccoon, that was a raccoon that was diseased. There are cases of raccoons with rabies throughout Florida every year, but there's not a whole lot of them. It's about 1 in every 200 raccoons, give or take, that test positive for rabies. But the best way to protect against rabies goes right back to the feeding issue. We know raccoons and cats, for example, can give each other rabies when they're both attracted to feeding stations, like cat colonies. And the food is the common denominator, whether it's garbage or pet food, birdseed, that's bringing raccoons into those urban areas and causing them to become such an issue.
Now, I wanted you to go back to that question, what the explanation, because of my next concern. I want to ask the town manager, well, how many residents do you think we have listening right now? Or do we have any residents who's listening?
We have 2 people on YouTube right now.
My reason for asking that question is she kept referring back to food. And I'm proud to say, and I'm not saying that our neighborhood is, everybody is, but our garbage, I never, very seldom do I ever see food out on Tuesday. When the garbage picks up, we have these big garbage cans. They can't get in them, so I don't see food outside. However, I want to share something with my fellow council people, and I'm glad Councilman Smith brought it up. We also have to be responsible for ourselves, and I'm glad you are here. Thank you, Ms. Barker. I'm glad our town manager brought you here, because we, even though we have Fish and Wildlife talking, we have a responsibility ourselves. I'd like to share with you something that happened, and I was surprised. I'm glad I read this handout, and I hope that we can also put it on email so our residents can read it, because instantly, Mayor, when I read this, I learned some things I didn't know. But yesterday, as I was walking my dog, and Miss Barker, I have a Chihuahua, and I have a raccoon that when he runs in the tree in my backyard, so I can't walk my dog at 7 o'clock at night. But as I was walking yesterday, a gentleman, Councilman Smith, that pool you referred to is right in front of your house. A member, and I hate to, well, I'm not going to, anyway, the gentleman called me as I'm walking my dog, and he asked me, what the council people going to do about the raccoons? I said, well, we have already sent you emails about the meeting we're having. He said, well, they're coming from over there, in front of his house. I said, where? He said, right there where the pool is. He said, the pool has that little house next to the pool, Councilman Smith. It has, and it's up from the ground, and it has an opening at the bottom. And he described to me, you know what he said to me? A neighbor living on Paxton said to me, yes, the raccoons are hatching under there. And right next to that, what do you call the room that, I guess, the room that's right next to the pool? He had a name for it. He said the raccoons are hatching under there. And Miss Barker, right next to the room that he's referring to is the water. So you have water right next to there. Not only do they have food, they even have water. So I wanted my fellow council members to understand what I'm saying. We are also going to have to start being responsible for ourselves. We know food and water. Also, there is a cat. I had to literally have a screen door enclosed and installed on my patio, Mayor Albury, because I got up last year, and I said, Deputy, hear this, and I didn't know that. This huge cat that walks around in our neighborhood. He makes 2 chihuahuas. One morning I opened my door, and what was sitting in the chair on my patio? This big cat. He was on my patio, and he ran up and got in the corner and scared me to death because he wanted to attack me and my dog. I ran out. So I put a screen door on my patio because that could have been a raccoon. Getting back to also, I'm giving you examples why we in the community, and that's why I asked how many residents are listening. We have a part to play inside all of this also. The very resident that the raccoon was following, Mr. Metcalf, that you left your house and came over to help us on Valentine's Day. I just realized when I read this that raccoons are drawn to gardens. That young lady has the most beautiful garden behind her house. She tells me to come over at Miss Mayor Albury. I can get greens and beans, and Vice Mayor, beautiful, clean, excellent. Raccoons probably love her garden. And she was the one the raccoons were were chasing. So I said that to say this, and I hope that the people are listening. So I don't know. So right now, thank you, Mr. Metcalf, for allowing us, at least educating us. But we have a responsibility on ourselves right now to decide what we are going to do about, I don't know, maybe Ms. Barker can tell us, because now that we know, but all we said, though, is food. What about water? Would water draw them also?
Potentially, water could. Certainly swimming pools, since we know raccoons like to defecate in them, and things like bird baths can also be attractive to raccoons and other wildlife. I appreciate your sentiment, because you're right. The only way to really get on top of this is the whole community doing the right thing. Because if one person is securing their food and their neighbor is not, the raccoons are going to continue to be an issue. And if, in the one example where you mentioned the raccoon was coming up close to your porch, guarantee that raccoon is eating food off somebody else's porch, and now he's checking porches, which isn't productive for anybody. That puts people at risk of coming into contact with that animal or their pets. So it really needs to be a community-wide effort to secure food and to secure water to prevent raccoons from accessing them. And if let's just hypothetically say, the whole community secures their attractants and they haze those raccoons when they see them, you should not expect for the raccoons to all move out. There will be some that hang around because there's natural food that hold them to the area, but they are going to be more respectful of people. They should start shifting and coming out at night instead of coming out during the day. They should absolutely stop coming up on people's porches, whether it's the front or the back, looking for food. They should be less visible as well. So they're going to have that healthy respect for people. Those are the animals you want in your community, not the ones that are behaving brazenly.
Well, I said that to say this, that cat, he's following the cat. They'll feed the cat. We have more cats almost in this neighborhood than the raccoon. This cat is everywhere. And my neighbor one of my neighbors tells me that she leaves food outside because she loves animals. And she feeds the cats.
And by that, she's feeding the raccoons too.
She's feeding the raccoons too.
I can almost guarantee it. And we see this a lot with folks that are, their heart is in the right place, and they're trying to maintain cats in communities by leaving food out indefinitely for them.
Yep.
They're feeding the raccoons too.
Amen. No more.
Okay.
I'm through. Thank you, Ms. Mayor.
Oh, certainly. Let me ask a question to that first, and then I'll come right to Councilman Smith. Now, as it relates to that, you had stated earlier in terms of just feeding, and correct me if I misstated, that feeding raccoons in the state of Florida is illegal? Okay. All righty. So if we can, maybe if not now, get that Florida statute so that we can also put that out there when we put the letter out on the website, so that they'll know that this is illegal.
Mr. Mayor, you know your mask buffers your voice.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Okay. All righty.
Florida State Statute 68 is an administrative statute that FWC writes a civil citation.
Could you talk to the mic, sir?
Oh, I'm sorry. Statute 68A, which is the statute that they're saying that wildlife is illegal to feed. That's an administrative statute that FWC issues like a traffic ticket, or you should stop for speeding type of injunction. Like Mr. Park said earlier, we try to educate first before we make any arrest or find somebody. I believe there's also a secondary statute, but like Commissioner Green said, it's going to have to go to personal responsibility of getting rid of the food sources that these animals are attracted to.
Well, certainly. And what we want to do is make sure that we put information out to the public so that they'll know and understand. Now, what about what one might consider incidental feeding? And that is, my intent is to feed cats, whether they're feline cats or whatever. Maybe we shouldn't be doing that. But if it's an incidental feeding or a byproduct of feeding a cat.
Sir, they're going to line up just like a cat and grab the food.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always going to be spillage.
Okay.
With my dogs, I got to sweep up and clean up after I'm finished. If somebody does have a question, they can call the sheriff's office and send a deputy out. And if, I'm over in the office Monday through Friday, please reach out to me and I can come over and look at it. I have some good resources for the local FWC. We can also, if the animals are trapped, we can take them to Belvedere and drop them off stray animals, just like a dog.
Okay. Now, I have some additional questions, but I did want to just piggyback off that one. Councilman Smith and then Councilwoman Green. And Vice Mayor.
Okay, it's great that this information being put out, but I'm thinking kind of outside the box, and I don't know if this is feasible, but it's just something that I think that may work. Manager Metcalf, and Councilwoman Green has stated, we put the information out, email the residents and stuff, but is there a way we can place signs? I'm not saying a big billboard or something like that, but something that's not massive. And I'm not saying door hangers either. That's okay, but I'm saying maybe that's something that FWC or we as a municipal municipality can look into, you know, we get in oral, visually, but, you know, sometimes you place signs like in, waterways, they, you know, they tell you don't keep alligators and stuff like that. I'm just saying, maybe some of those placards in the neighborhood, they don't have to be a permanent thing, they can be a pilot thing, a couple months until, the residents kind of catch on to what they're called. And everybody has good intention, as we know. If no one wakes up and says, I want to attract 100 raccoons in a 1 square mile area, but unfortunately, we're having some issues. So if that's just something I'm throwing out to us on the dais and the residents, and if it happens, not at least I said it.
Okay. What Councilman Smith is asking, can we post signs? Just clarification on it for consideration. A lot of times you'll see like no boating, or you're saying, would you be suggesting a sign that also has some penalty to it under Florida statute, so forth, the penalty to it, or just informational?
I don't want to put too much teeth to it.
Just informational, or?
And for penalties and citations already, you know, if you look at the statute, it tells you that anyway, you know, what the do's and do not. So I don't want that. I just want it as informative, soften it a little bit. I don't really want to scare the residents, you know.
Mr. Mayor, I didn't understand what he asked.
My question was, and I'll repeat it, basically, you know, we are getting great information. We're getting orally. We got these pamphlets tells us why we're having this raccoon issue in the first place. I had suggested maybe we can get some placard signs. You know how you put signs in waterways when you don't feed alligators or don't swim. I'm just saying in their neighborhood.
Oh, I see.
Some signs, some metal, you know, nothing massive, not a billboard. And it don't have to be a permanent thing, maybe initially, and then, you know, to the resident kind of get understanding of how to handle it. Something like that, you know, a visual, you know, so that's what I was saying, Council. If that cleared everybody else what I was mentioning, you understand what I'm saying now, and I got my man down. Councilwoman Green.
Okay.
You understand my question now?
I think, in other words, you're saying have a list and itemize 1, 2, 3. These are things that we are doing that attracts them.
I'm not saying you can incorporate that. I'm basically saying signage.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So we want a sign, if I understand you, help me, Vice Mayor, that you had these are the things. Number 1, raccoon look for water. Number 2, the things will be on the sign, and these are the things that we are doing that are attracting the raccoon.
That's fine. I'm looking for simplicity. I don't want a paragraph for simplicity.
Yeah, simple sentence.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't really want a whole lot of literature.
Can I say what?
Yes.
And what is one more?
Sure.
Ms. Barker. Did she leave? Finally, could you help me here? The first time that was a huge raccoon 5, 6, or 7 years ago in my backyard. It was so big, Mr. Metcalf was afraid of it. Now, you help me tell me how I'm only 112 pounds, I'm supposed to dispose of it by myself. What am I supposed to do? Advise me.
I want to make sure I heard your question correctly. I'm having a little bit of a hard time hearing you.
Okay.
You're asking me how to dispose of it.
If I find a 115-pound raccoon in the tree in my backyard, which happened about 2 weeks ago, what do I do? I can't call you to tell you to come and get him out of my yard. So I have to call and hire someone to come and get him out of my tree. Right?
So he's just in your tree, and forgive me, I'm having a hard time hearing you. I believe you said he was just like.
Okay, let me take my mask off. Can you understand me now? Can you understand me now?
I can barely hear you. Mr. Metcalf, can you repeat the question for me, please?
She's basically asking if she sees a large raccoon in her backyard tree, what is she supposed to do with that?
come down and leave on his own. Raccoons being in trees is fairly normal. I realize being in a tree in their backyard is not ideal, but that's kind of what they do when they're scared. So being up a tree is good. That means he's afraid and he's doing what he's supposed to do.
Let me try it again. Excuse me. Let me try it again. Mr. Metcalf, I'm asking her, how would advise me, how do I dispose of a raccoon by myself? Other than calling a contractor. Other than calling a contractor.
Raccoon?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
other than calling a trapper.
Other than calling a trapper, one or two ways, and I hear you, I've done this myself, it's not pleasant. You can double bag it and put it out on the curb for trash day.
A live
or you can
raccoon.
bury it.
It's alive.
A live raccoon. Just a raccoon. A live raccoon in the tree.
A live raccoon.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's alive.
So that there's a live raccoon in the tree, and the question is, what do we do with it? Is that correct?
In my yard. A live raccoon in my yard.
Live raccoon in your yard. My suggestion would be to haze it. Make it feel like it should not belong. Now this is if you're comfortable, but this is using a water hose and air horns, pots and pans, throwing stuff at it, make it go away. Make that raccoon know that it has to yield to you. You are the dominant one. It doesn't belong there. And typically that raccoon is going to flee. Now if he goes up a tree, you're probably not going to be able to do anything because that's where raccoons go when they feel unsafe. They climb trees. That's good. That's what he's supposed to do. If he's up a tree, your probably only recourse is to leave the area and make it as quiet as possible so he feels comfortable and safe enough to come down and go. But if he's just cruising and walking around your backyard minding his own business, I will let that raccoon know that he is not welcome on your property. And if you're comfortable giving him a pretty negative experience, you can even do this from the interior of your house if you chose.
Ms. Barker, I think the intent of the question is, and perhaps we've gotten the answer, but I guess we want to clearly hear it, is that if I'm in the yard and I see a raccoon in the tree, what should be my response? Other than hazing, I've tried, they're very industrious. So if I tried hazing, that raccoon refused to leave, what do I do?
Right.
I would not try to haze him in a tree.
Okay, or if he's in the yard.
Alone.
Okay, if he's on the ground and he refuses to leave, he's waiting for dinner, he's not going to go anywhere. What do I do?
There's typically enough things you can do to make it feel uncomfortable enough to go. I have not run into a situation where a raccoon has not yielded unless it's been diseased. And then you will know pretty quickly, not because it's not yielding and not leaving, you will know from some other behaviors that it's doing. For example, they will stumble like they're intoxicated, they'll attack inanimate objects like a tree, they'll appear emaciated, they'll sometimes have seizures or they'll tremor, sometimes they're foaming at the mouth, they will do some weird stuff, and if that is the case, you call SWC, or you call a wildlife rehabber so we can try to get someone out and get that animal removed.
Okay,
Typically, if he's just cruising through your yard and you start hazing it by yelling at it or throwing rocks at it or using a water hose, it's gonna go. Or it's gonna climb a tree. That's the appropriate response.
Let's assume we have an outlier. We have one of those bold, I've had in the backyard before he went into the garbage can and he was having a good day. You know, it was a nighttime and I went out and I tried to chase it away and he sort of looked at me like I'm not leaving until I finish eating. Okay, in a situation like that, and I guess what we're looking for is some definitive answer that may not be present or may not be something that you can answer other than call the trapper. So in between hazing and calling the trapper, what can be done? If the raccoon refuses to leave.
In between hazing and calling a trapper and the animal's refusing to leave, I'm thinking, I honestly have not run into many situations like that.
Hypothetically speaking, let's just say you run into a situation, because I think that's the import of the question. What ultimately can you do other than hazing didn't work, and calling a trapper, which now is a cost to the resident. What's in between that can be done?
If hazing doesn't work, and my suggestion would be to let the raccoon leave on its own and reevaluate why it's coming into the yard.
Okay, okay. All righty. Councilman Smith?
Wonderful. I want to direct this question to Councilwoman Green, and since make sure they know, had mentioned about hazing. I had a situation, and Councilwoman Green, I don't expect you to do what I did, but I did implement hazing. What I did, I got several cabbage palm trees in my front yard. I spotted a good-sized raccoon in that cabbage palm tree. I got on the roof with a water hose and jetted at the raccoon. Initially, it climbed even higher into the area, but the hazing did work because it came down. Now again, I don't think you Councilwoman Green get no ladder and climb up on the roof with a water hose, but hazing was effective with me when I applied it. It worked magnificently, if I can use that word. So I'm not saying that's maybe the answer you need to hear, but I'm just kind of not necessarily endorsing, but I am endorsing that hazing can work if applied right. But had I not had success with hazing, I don't figure out that I'm going to get off the roof and it'll go down eventually. But hazing worked in my case, and it came down to the water holes for high pressure.
Okay, any other questions, comments? I have a few quick ones if there's none others. Okay, all right, we'll come right out to the floor in just a moment. Okay, let's just say that you have a nuisance, what we have here, what's called a nuisance raccoon. And you want to get rid of the raccoon, and make sure I say this properly. I know that we have the ability to dispose of the raccoon, right? But now are there certain limits to how you go about that? For instance, right now we have this proliferation of iguanas, and we have those everywhere, right? And the rule is you have to kill them humanely. Right. So let's just say that I'm out in the yard, have a shovel in my hand, I'm planting a tree, and a raccoon come at me, and can I use the shovel to kill the raccoon? That's just the blunt question. Or is shooting the only acceptable method of getting rid of the raccoon?
I'm trying to make sure I heard the question correctly. That was in reference to euthanasia and humane euthanasia. I think there was an example of
yes.
using a shovel.
Right. If I'm out yes, just the only thing I have in my hand, I'm outside working in the yard, see a raccoon, and he becomes a little aggressive, looks as if he starts coming toward me. I'll just kind of put that in the scenario. Only thing I have in my hand, I don't have a gun in my hand, I have a shovel. What is the law as it relates to defending myself against this raccoon, and if that leads to the demise of this raccoon, what does the law say regarding that?
So the law says, as far as I am aware, that you are allowed to defend yourself in cases where you're put in an unsafe situation by wildlife. And this could be from a federally endangered species to an animal like a raccoon. Now, if I would say a shovel is not an inhumane method of euthanasia if you were euthanizing a nuisance raccoon. But in the scenario you just gave, raccoon is approaching me in a predatory manner. I have a shovel. I'm going to use it to defend myself. I think as long as you prove that you were defending yourself, FWC would not likely hold you accountable for that. And that's me as a biologist telling you this. Clarify, I'm not a law enforcement officer, but I have heard of people in similar situations with other animals that have used similar means to defend themselves, and they have not been charged for that. But simply, if you are trapping a raccoon as a nuisance because he's defecating in your pool, and you've got that raccoon in a trap, a shovel would not be a humane method of euthanasia. Does that help or does that make it worse?
No, it helped. I just wanted to get some clarification on it. Just two quick other questions. Now, if let's just say that I was able to trap a nuisance raccoon. I have this raccoon. What do I do with it? I know you said you can take it out to remote areas. If I don't get permission from a property owner, I want to follow the law, right? And I don't get permission from a property owner that has the contiguous pieces of property that would allow the acreage that would allow that to happen. What do I do at that point?
Sure, and this is difficult when addressing raccoons in urban areas because the options on euthanasia are limited. The most humane way to euthanize wildlife that are being removed as a nuisance is by a firearm. However, in most urban areas, it's not practical, nor is it safe, nor is it lawful to euthanize with firearm. Your only other option is to contact a wildlife trapper to remove that animal and euthanize it off-site where they have other means to do so. This is part of the reason why FWC advocates securing attractants and hazing and not trapping that raccoon unless it's the last resort, unless you've tried everything else and it's really just not being resolved. Because catching the animal, number one, is not always easy. And then number two, what are you going to do with the animal after you capture it?
Which is my question.
The would want to have a plan for what they're going to do with that animal after it's captured.
Correct.
Including euthanasia, which is, as I mentioned, it's uneasy in urban areas.
Right. Here's my question. For instance, if I went to a wildlife store, bought a trap, I don't want to kill an animal. I want to capture it, have it relocated. So I go to a wildlife store, I buy a trap. I was successful. I trapped the raccoon. Now what do I do?
You've got one of several options. Euthanizing it, relocating it within the rule, or releasing it at the site of capture. You know, if you're trapping him because he's a public safety risk, euthanizing him at the site of, releasing him at the site of capture doesn't make sense. If you're capturing him because he's in your attic, that makes a little bit more sense. You can secure your attic and let the animal go. But options are few once that animal is captured.
Okay. But I have one other question, then we're going to go to the floor. We have a question out there. And just in terms of best practices that you've seen in other municipalities, because we do get questions, and so what we want to do is be very clear in terms of what the responsibility or the obligation a municipality has in these kind of situations. So what are some of the best practices, best practices you've seen in other municipalities?
Some of the best practices I've seen for other municipalities to prevent problems with wildlife, including raccoons, is to not allow feeding of cats or to allow community cats or feeding stations for cats. A lot of raccoon issues are directly tied with feral cats. Well, that's one of the best ways I've seen other municipalities prevent issues, is preventing or not allowing community cats in their areas or allowing feeding stations. Another thing that we've seen from other municipalities is putting ordinances on trash, meaning trash cannot go out for pickup until the night, or excuse me, on the curb, until the morning is pickup, rather than the night before, and trash needs to be kept in a secure receptacle. So not in a bag on the side of the road, it needs to be in a can with lid that prevents wildlife from getting into it. Those two things have been some of the best ways municipalities have curbed issues with wildlife like this.
Oh, thanks so much. I do appreciate it. So with the permission of council, we'll go out to the floor. There's a question on the floor. Yes, you can just come forward and just state your name and address for the record. Okay, I'll call the smart for the record. Okay, thanks.
I can tell you my experience. Ms. Matt, pull your mic down. Your mic.
It's about to fall out of there, Ken.
The raccoon the cat ate in my apartment. So I had to do the expensive thing, I had to have a trapper come out, but the thing about it, she would leave the babies at a certain time of day. Trapper kept coming out, but I had to pay for each baby to be removed. Then the mother came out, tore the screens out in the house, looking for those babies, and I put mothballs, everything. She was like, she came back with a vengeance like a couple of nights. So they are very destructive. Now, when I was leaving my home at 11, I saw one going in your yard yesterday. So, even though you still have visitors. So what we're doing now is we are going to Home Depot and they're selling something and we're kind of just sprinkling around the yard. So I just wanted to share that.
Okay.
What are you putting in the yard? I'm sorry?
Was it wolf urine or coyote urine that you were putting in the yard?
It's something in a blue container that we buy from Home Depot. And we sprinkle it around.
Okay. There's something from Home Depot that they recommend.
Mrs. Green, she said they bought something from Home Depot.
Yeah, I went, what would she buy?
She didn't give a definition what it
I
is.
don't know.
Okay.
Home Depot has to tell you what they sell.
It's a blue container, but they're a nuisance, animals, we want a container to see what you have a problem with, and you buy that particular. Okay.
I'll look into it. That's why I
Okay.
said, oh.
All righty. Okay. Any other questions or comments as it relates to this item?
I just wanted to know, if we have anything on our our ordinances of the town for, this particular concern. Is it a public safety concern? Is it a wildlife issue? What do we have already in place?
And I'll address this one, Vice Mayor. Thank you for the question. You have an ordinance on the books that pertains to animals. It more so speaks to, we have two ordinances actually. One is just generically animals, but it's fowl, chickens, those kind of things, and caging of animals. You also have a dog and cat section of your ordinance. Not specifically applicable to this because those are obviously not raccoons. Your current ordinances deal mostly with running at large, so off leash, excrement, defecating on property. Nothing that squarely addresses this issue.
Okay. So I would like to ask if we could develop some type of ordinance that would address specifically the nuisance animal, the raccoon or other wildlife, that we have some guidelines in place for procedures to carry forward.
So if I could ask for just clarification, just to be clear, the state law that was referenced, the Florida Administrative Code sections, those apply whether or not you have anything specific in your ordinance or not. One thing that came up most recently that may be helpful, you do have quite a bit of trash regulation, but there may be an opportunity there to do as was recommended and revise your code to specifically target when trash receptacles can go out and how they are to be contained so that raccoons are not getting in garbage if that is an issue. But you don't need to duplicate, the state law and the state administrative code to address or to allow for the removal of nuisance animals. That already exists in state law.
Okay. In regards to residents feeding pets or leaving food out, how do we make that into an ordinance or mandate, some way to enforce?
That is, go ahead, I'm sorry, go ahead.
If you know that there's a resident who's intentionally leaving food out for animals and it's causing a nuisance, what do we have in our codes to address that?
That I think the recommendation of the FWC person was to have ordinances that address feeding stations or the feeding of feral animals. So that certainly I could pull together, some sample code and bring it back to you for further discussion and further direction.
That's what I'm basically want to ask. We have something that's different in my code for that purpose. Thank you.
All righty, and we'll come back to that. Then we have Councilwoman Green and then Smith and then McConnell, and I think we'll wrap up maybe. Councilwoman Green?
I'd just like to emphasize one thing again, and because I know we don't want to beat a dead horse to death, but I hope our residents, and we only have one resident who took time out of her day to come to this meeting, and we only have 2 people listening. And I really appreciate the council and the town manager, I don't know about anybody else, and Ms. Barker for taking the time out, because this was a lot of time we spent to address something that's been bothering us for 2 years. And look at the interest from the community. And let me be honest with you, Mr. Mayor, it's because they are feeding the cats. It's us. And I'm just saying, and for those of you who are listening, you can get angry if you want to. Don't come banging on my door anymore. And I'm not calling Mr. Metcalf anymore for our help, nor the mayor, because we have to do our parts. We can't keep wasting their time when you don't show the appreciation. And Ms. Smart, I don't know about the other council, but for me personally, I really appreciate you coming to council meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Smith?
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly with everybody that has opened dialogue discussion from First Water Commission to PBSO. And thank you, Resident Ms. Mark, for bringing the light to me that I had a visitor. And I thought I was on top of everything. But this is where I'm at. It's just a suggestion again. And I'm kind of going to go back to the attorney, ordinance is already out there, if you look at the laws and stuff. But it's a culture that's going on. So and we have identified what the culprit, what causes it. If it's absolutely presented, if you feed, they will come. So even my suggestion of a sign, even my suggestion of an ordinance of tweaking and going to code and check pickup aid, we will combat the issue because it needs to be, there's no guarantee for kind of tweak to resolve, but we as the residents have to take some responsibility. I can't put more emphasis on it, and I'm going to repeat it again until you get tired of repeat. If you feed them, they will come. So we have to get out of that routine of feeding, and I'm already I'm a type of person that like to put my recycle bins and stuff, and there's different in there, so I'm already playing that chess game. I'm going to be 5 steps ahead of it now that I've got this wonderful information. And I like the fact that putting out your curve and your clip is out at a certain time, because I have a tendency of putting it out the night before. I'm going to stop doing that. So if I'm willing to change, I can't fix the world or fix the community, but I can fix myself. And so it starts with us individually, fixing ourselves, and hopefully, they've been here 100 years, they're going to be here 1,000 years after us. So, but we don't need to make them feel so comfortable and get so domesticated. So it's some things that I need to do. I can't speak for others. But some things that we can do as a community to do. And then the ordinance and the signs and the placards and the hour speed will be icing on the cake, but hopefully we won't need that in the future. I'm definitely going to change some things. So stop.
Okay, all righty, we're going to wrap up here with Councilwoman Green.
I want to ask Councilman Smith a question. Yes, Councilwoman. Am I wrong, but those big green garbage cans that we in the community use, we always put them out a night before. Raccoons can't get in those, am I correct? They can't, they lift up the lid and get in them?
Yes.
Oh, well, everybody in the community does that.
Yeah.
Put them out that night before.
Yeah, correct, right, anything there is night or day, they're nocturnal, so whether you have it in the
that's my question,
backyard, the
Mr. Mayor,
front
so are
yard.
my question to you then is, are you saying that then we need to not put our green garbage cans out the night before, we put them out Tuesday morning?
Yeah.
Am I right?
Well, we'd have to look at the legalities of it. However, keep in mind, just from a practical standpoint,
You didn't answer my question.
if they're going to get in your garbage can, it doesn't matter if it's on the side of the house, the back of the house, the front of the house, if they're going to get in the garbage can. Right, so no, I can't answer, we'd have to go to our legal, in terms of just what the legal consequences or ramifications would be regarding that. So I'll have our attorney answer that question for you.
I think there's 2 issues. So that point is well taken, that the garbage can, just because you roll it out to the street, the night before or the day of garbage collection doesn't change if it's on the side of your house for all that time. I don't know, people don't always put them in their garage. So if the garbage can is out all week long with garbage in it, there's the issue of securing the garbage can so that the raccoons cannot get in it. That's one way to address it. There is also a potential availability to add more restriction to your code to specify exactly when you are to put out your garbage can receptacles.
That's my question. I'm asking, should we put the garbage cans out Tuesday morning?
And so I'll review your code. You have several garbage sections, and I'm going to bring back to you what your code allows, currently restricts, and potential changes.
I'm just asking a question. Would it solve the problem if we put the garbage cans out Tuesday morning?
No.
Well, that's all. I just answered the
Ms. Green,
question.
let me ask you this. Where is your garbage can all the other time other than Tuesday?
Mine is enclosed. He can't get in it.
Is it inside of the garage?
No, it's not a garage, but I had an enclosure built where he can't get to my garbage can.
Okay, but not all residents have that option. So most of us have our garbage can on the side of the house,
Right.
and then we wheel it out either Monday night or Tuesday morning.
But that,
So it wouldn't make a difference if we put an ordinance not to put it out till Tuesday morning. That doesn't make a difference. The can is still there in the yard.
no, you're not answering my question. Vice Mayor, I'm glad. Let me ask you one question. If we put the garbage cans out Tuesday morning, would that eliminate the problem? Because Tuesday
No.
morning,
No.
that's all I asked. Just say no. That's all
And-
I said.
Wherever the garbage can is where they go.
Let's, right.
I've never seen a raccoon in front of my house in the daylight on a Tuesday morning.
Let's see if we can come out of the weeds on this one, on this item. Right, at least, definitely.
I didn't hear you.
See,
Y'all mother.
do we want to get into a situation where we're going to dictate that garbage has to go out in the morning only, or have residents have the ability to get it out at night? A lot of people get up early to go to work or whatever the case is, and I don't know that we want to be that restrictive, because I've seen raccoons in the backyard attacking my garbage can, in the front, the side. It doesn't matter. It's not the side of the house where the location of the garbage can that attract the raccoon, it's what's in it. And what's in it is going to be in it, in the front yard, the backyard, the rear yard, on top of the roof, it doesn't matter. So I don't know that that solves the problem. A suggestion might be, in terms of just how we go about approaching this, would be, number one, a newsletter. That newsletter includes all of this information that we've gathered here tonight, right? And also in the newsletter, we reference the Florida statutes as it relates to feeding cats, right? Which we know is that it's the main attractant from what we're hearing now from our specialist who's on the phone, as well as our detective. So we include all of that information relative to that, so that what we're trying to do, as Councilman Smith stated, you want to change the culture. You want to change people's habits. How do you do that? You do that by way of what? Information, provide information. And so I'll go ahead and just come with the town manager. We're going to go ahead and start working on a newsletter ASAP, where we can refer to the Florida statutes, incorporate this. And once we do that, we post a newsletter as well as this document here out online. So, and we can also refer to it in the newsletter, also post it online at our website. And so they'll have this information. I think we do that first to try and educate our residents first, and then see what happens thereafter. And then if we need to move into further direction, then we do that. Move in the agenda. Is there a second to that?
Question.
Okay.
Question.
Okay. Is there a second first? Then we get to your question. Is there
Yeah.
a second to that motion?
I said question.
Okay. Councilman Smith moved that we close discussion on this item. Right, that was his motion. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Has been properly moved and seconded. Question, Councilman Green? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. It is carried. Thanks so much. And Ms. Barker, we thank you so much for taking time out of your evening. Yes, we really appreciate it. Very valuable information. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Barker.
We didn't follow parliamentary procedure, that's what it didn't go right. Never mind, we'll learn how to do it later.
Okay, we had a first and a
I had a
second.
question, but it wasn't relevant to that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. But I asked if you had a question.
I was trying to stop it before you went through with the motion, but never mind, I just asked after the meeting.
Okay, all righty. Okay, so our next item for discussion on the agenda And thank you. You have a great evening. Thanks so much for your time.
Hey, thank you.
Okay, our next item is Palm Beach County League of Cities, Amity.
Yes, thank you. Very quickly, just a calendar placement at this point. There's not full information yet, but the next general membership meeting of the league is on March 24th, 2021, at the normal time. I estimate it'll be a telephone conference again. At your next meeting, I'll bring back the topic that has not yet been set.
Thanks so much. Any questions for Amity? No, thanks so much. Okay, Councilman Smith.
So when will you, since you know information at the time, when will you be able to get some clarity, I guess, to us, in a couple of days?
Probably next week, but as soon as I see that they've set their agenda and they start sending out information, I'll send it to Manager Metcalf so he can relay it to you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for Amity? Okay, thanks so much. We'll move on to our agenda. Our next item, we have no items for number 6, so we'll move on to item 7. This is, of course, a discussion on the approval of the addendum to increase the total cost of the existing contract between the town of Mangonia Park and J.W. Cheatham. Ken?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council, the next two items, 7A and 7B, you have already approved now. 7A you approved in October, and 7B you approved on an emergency basis in January. Now, what we're doing tonight, the first item, 7A, and I'm sure that the attorney would say we'll take these one at a time. So 7A, when this came before you and you approved it, this was for, and I do have a handout for you that lists these projects. And the first page is Project 1 that shows 53rd Street, part of 53rd Street for the paving. And then on the second page, it shows that corner of Fairfield and East Avenue that's been badly damaged, over the years by all the flooding. So when this came before you, the manager had left out a portion, 4,000 square yards of 53rd Street that I intended to have in the packet. I had already gotten with the engineer and the contractor. We went on site. There was an additional stretch to 53rd Street that we intended to have in that. That was left out by error. So that is the additional 14,973. So what you had approved in October was $139,443. So we're asking you to approve a different amount, which would now be $154,416. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have on that.
Thank you so much. Questions or comments as it relates to the item? Any council comments or questions?
My question then, Mike, if I heard you correctly, that was a section that didn't get calculated in there. So is that the cost? That's the concrete cost of that section that didn't get calculated and it was left out in error? Is that a final and more accurate recalculation?
Yes, sir.
Of the area that needs to be addressed that we're having problems with?
Yes, sir.
Give me the amount again. I'm reading the give it to me again. The amount additional.
The new amount would be $154,416. Again, that would be for 53rd Street and for that section of East and Fairfield.
All right, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Other council questions or comments?
Yes. So that Bangkok and the engineers that y'all sat down with the vendor and came up with was the service that needs to take place.
That's correct. In fact, Van Cott, our civil engineer, he's been involved every step of the way on there. He's actually led the effort, if you will.
Any other questions or comments?
The 583.75, was for
That's the next
Fairfield,
item.
or that,
That's the next item. That is for, East Avenue.
that's for East
That's the
Avenue.
next- That's the next item.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So-
Sorry.
Now, I'm trying to find out what the added money's for. It's for A, the 14,973?
That's correct.
So that's,
Project.
so you're
one,
going,
which
you
is
project 1, 7A?
7A on your agenda. Yes,
Okay.
sir. If you look at the printout, and I know this is very crude, but you'll see, the pink spot, that's, where Hill Avenue is located. This is on the front page.
Right,
Where
so,
the pink and the yellow meet, going, if you go west, that was what you approved in October. The yellow point below the pink, going east, that is the additional
that's it,
14,000.
okay. Okay,
Anything else, McConnell?
that's all.
Okay. Other council comments or questions? Alrighty.
Oh, you know what, I will, refrain from that, I'm gonna ask specific, you know, if Bangkok and India and firm and talk, I don't really need to add that up here because it wouldn't make sense to add that up here. I'm quite sure it's an engineering thing, when they get down to, cut surfacing and cutting into, and that's something that I probably ask them, so I don't think that's your area of expertise, so that would be a question for, and in case you're wondering, I was sort of into some specifics, the asphalt and the construction of the actual area that we're gonna be resurfacing, so I think I'll direct that question, or I know I'll direct that question to, the engineer, so I'll refrain from that.
Other questions or comments? Okay. Just quickly, Ken, and I had all of mine answered in our meeting that Ken and I had. Just for the understanding of that, just to make sure that all council have the clear understanding, there was the additional, when we got the original submittal, it had the amount that we have reflected here. Then the additional 13 was for the purpose for, because when he submitted, and I'll let you take it from there.
When we submitted the initial, proposal, that proposal did not include the additional stretch on 53rd Street, which was about 4,000, I'm rounding this up, about 4,000 square yards of asphalt on 53rd. The intent was to have that in the project. So, now, you approved this in October, we had a massive amount of rain during that time, and so the project never started. And so now we're at the point where we said, okay, let's get the agreement corrected to include that amount. Now, I'll say this too, if you take A and B, I know we're not discussing B, but those two combined with the new numbers, we're still 51,000 under budget. So it's not going to be a budgetary issue.
Okay. Ready? Thanks, Ken. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, we have the information before us, and we've had an explanation given by the town manager. If there's no other questions or comments, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the additional funds, 14,973 to complete the project that has been identified for servicing the road rehabilitation paving contract.
Okay. And not to exceed the amount of the 154?
Yes.
After the addition? Okay. And so noted. It
Second.
has been properly moved and seconded. Have a question on the motion?
Yeah, before we second it, since it's been seconded, I want some conditions in place though, especially with this additional, bond that we had covered earlier. And as Mr. Metcalf said, we're 51 under budget. I don't want to see any hidden, hopefully I know things happen, but I don't have a problem you second it, but it's got to be some conditions set in on that second. So if you're going to second it, make sure there be some more concrete conditions.
Okay.
And I'm thinking to McCollum, so that you did second it.
Yes.
Well, it has to be in the motion as well.
Right. Now, we can amend the motion. You have specific conditions that you want to outline? Or?
My specific conditions is, especially with dealing with these figures, since we're rediscussing this, that those numbers, since we're second, they are concrete and fine and nothing hidden. There's no surprises, so I don't want to come, but it needs to be clear. Go ahead, Attorney.
Yeah, if I could just clarify, this, as proposed tonight, is an addendum, so that would be a minor modification to the agreement. Provision 5 of the agreement sets the total cap of the monetary amount, so this would be an amendment which sets the new cap, which includes, if approved by you all, that additional funds, but that monetary amount would be capped by contract, by agreement. So there would be no addition, they would have to come back to you, a further modification to approve any additional money or any additional expense as part of the project.
So my question then, I don't have a problem with second, it have to be beneath the cap, or bigger than that cap.
Yeah, and I think the way that the agenda item is written is that new total would be $154,416. That includes the additional $14,973, so that would be the total amount set in the addendum, which would be the total amount of compensation for the project.
Okay, so are we as a council on board with that?
Yes, in fact, Vice Mayor amended her second to not to exceed the 154,416.
All right, thanks.
Okay. Right, anything else, or any other parameters or considerations, or? Okay, McConnell, you had something?
Okay.
Alrighty. Okay, we're still on the question, so if there's any additional questions or comments, recommendations? Hearing none.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, if I could just, for the record, did the seconder of the motion agree to that modification of the not to exceed?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Righty, so noted for the record. If there's no additional questions or comments, roll call, please.
Mayor,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Johnson,
Yes.
Councilman Green,
Yes.
Councilman McConnell,
Yes.
and Councilman Smith.
Yes, under those conditions.
Okay. All right, thanks so much. Our next item is item 7B, and of course, this is a discussion on the approval of an addendum to increase the total cost of an existing contract between the Town of Magonia Park and J.W. Cheatham, LLC, reflecting an additional amount as well. Ken?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council, and for Councilman Smith, I hope this item is evidence that I would always bring it back to you if there's anything different than what you approved previously. So I can appreciate the conditions, but I hope this shows that back in January, you approved an emergency agreement with the same contractor for the way it was worded in your motion, your second, and the vote was up to or not to exceed $103,000. The actual amount, the actual quote was $103,583.75. So we just wanted to clean that up for the record and have you vote on that or consider that again. You did approve on January 19th $103,000 for an emergency repair on East Avenue. And the handout on the third page references that. This is on East Avenue, just below 48th Street, south of 48th Street, just about all the way to Cost Towing. So the pink line is 48th Street. The yellow, that is the project. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay.
Yeah, my question, Dan, since we're having talked dialogue about this, it's specified with this project and the dollar amount, not necessarily the dollar amount, but we're using this word emergency. And so, and I, I'm a stickler on emergencies, first and foremost. Because if we don't do maintenance and repair and stuff like that, and then something pops up, it's not emergency, it's because we didn't do preventive maintenance. So can you kind of clear up what we're considering an emergency, but you're using that word? Clarify that for me, please.
My old definition of an emergency is any immediate threat to life, limb, or property. And in this case, the town engineer has deemed this an emergency because there's a potential for vehicle damage on this stretch. We've patched it along the way. We had a lot of rain in the summer and fall. As soon as the rain subsided a bit, we got out there and patched it. So it is patched right now. That's not going to hold up for too much longer. So the engineer is encouraging us to have this repaired as soon as possible.
All right, so, and anybody can jump in on this, but correct me, so if we use that scenario analogy of a car repair. Okay, I understand it's risk, I understand that the town can be liable for certain things, but what happened to insurance? When I say insurance, I wouldn't say the word for lack of a better word, happened to insurance, but if my vehicle is traveling on a stretch of road that happens to be in a municipality and something occur where I'm injured, okay, that's one thing. Or I cause injury to property, that's another thing. So, again,
I'm going to defer to the attorney on that.
Thank you, and if I could just bring us back to the code, which specifies when you have to publicly bid things, and you all are well aware of your threshold amounts, but emergency procurements, and I'll read it to you just so everyone is very clear, emergency procurements are allowed when it's deemed, and I think the town manager and the town engineer did deem this at the previous meeting, that the conditions would be detrimental to or would adversely affect the public health, property, welfare, or safety, or for immediate repairs that are needed to prevent damage to public property, machinery, or equipment. That's what your code says. So at the previous meeting, when this item was first considered, that emergency determination was made. I would rather not speak on this record about insurance claims. That's a separate issue, but just advise you that that emergency determination was made on first award. This is merely a contract amendment to correct an error in the monetary amount. So as was stated previously, and I think this came to the attention at agreement execution, but this would just be a minor amendment to reflect the new monetary total for an award that you have already deemed is an emergency repair. And I'll answer any questions. Thank you.
thank you.
Oh, sir. Oh, thanks so much. Okay. And to Councilman Smith, and I do applaud him because we have a fiduciary responsibility. He was considering cost. One of the things, of course, as it relates to cost overrun, a lot of times you'll have providers who, run into some unexpected stuff. All right. Our agreement has the scope of service, which sort of, this is what we're paying you to do. Right. And if there's any modifications, then of course, our engineer would have to take, and I'll say staff in a broad sense, our engineer, attorneys, and so forth, to take a look at it, make those recommendations, and it still has to come here, much like tonight, and we have to approve it here before any of that happens. So there's the safeguards in place. Okay. Ready? Any other questions or comments?
I was just going to say what the attorney clarified in very explicit terms, the qualification of emergency was already determined in our previous meeting. The only concern that was being brought out, to my understanding, is that the amount that we reviewed in the estimates was not reflected in the paperwork properly. And we have to correct that error. That's what I'm understanding, why we're bringing this back today.
Yes, and I'll defer to Manager Metcalf, but I believe it was the number that was on the agenda, and then, and the backup that was provided did not reflect that additional $583.75. So the agreement that was then drafted based on your agenda and the backup was, the monetary amount was incorrect. So this is essentially correcting an error, based on the way that it was presented at the original meeting.
And there was a manager's error, and I just wanted to correct that and have you consider that.
And I applaud, Councilman, you're meeting your responsibility. If there's an increase, question it. If it goes down, then we just quietly pass it. Okay. Okay, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, motion please.
Yes, I move that we approve the addendum to increase the total cost of the existing contract between the town of Franklin Park and W.E. Cheatham, reflecting the additional $583.73 equal 75 cents to equal the total of $103,583.75.
Thank you so much.
Second, my discussion to Vice Mayor's motion of the $583.75. Now they've been clear, explained legally from attorney as well as the manager. I'll second.
Okay, thank you so much. Motion has been moved and seconded. Are there any questions on the motion? Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, roll call please.
Mayor Alberry?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Green?
Yes.
Councilmember McConnell?
Yes.
And Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Thank you so much. It passes unanimously. Thanks so much. At this point in time, we'll go to public comments. And just before we do, my apologies to Ms. Smart, and we'll take whatever concern you had now. Yes, you just come right up. Yes, a question had been called, so the rules of order require that we stop and attend to that, so my apologies. Yeah, okay.
One of the things that my wife all this is keeping clean, and that kind of brings up the subject that I was going to learn about some parts of our neighborhood. Code enforcement needs to be given more teeth. Our codes need to be enhanced. We have folks moving in that think it's okay to be sampling something. You know, folks collecting construction materials, they don't have sod in their yard, and they're going across the street and they're destroying the sod of the neighbor's yard. Okay, I thought that we also have sod in our yard. So that's going on. We have folks that are collecting appliances in their yard, vehicles in their yard, and nothing is being done. Now, we talked about budgets, okay? When you let property values go down, then it affects the budget, correct? So I'm just asking that something be done to enhance code enforcement and to give him, the officer, the authority to come to you all, give suggestions, enhance our code, and enforce them. All of us have a responsibility to keep things. It shouldn't be a few people that's doing it. But we all understand what our responsibilities are. That will help our neighborhoods to keep them valued. Because what I see, the trend that I see now, is not good. I'm being surrounded now by Sanford and Son, both on Paxton and on Jefferson. And I hate to go out in my yard and look like this, and look like this. It's not pleasant. When you buy a piece of property, you buy a certain right. Quiet enjoyment. You should be able to have a pleasant atmosphere around you. So I'm just asking that we don't up our code enforcement. We have to do something because I see a definite decline. And it's happening very quickly. And these things that people are collecting, they provide habitat for raccoons. Okay, so let's step it up, please.
Okay, I know there's going to be questions, so I'm going to take these, and then I'm going to go to the attorney after Smith, and may answer some questions. Go right ahead.
First and foremost, resident smart, you ought to be commended for having, well, just having the say, because you basically kept it 100. I'm gonna segue into that because you are absolutely right. Why are you absolutely right? If we don't take a responsibility, as you say, it's gonna decline, and it is declining. But we all up here have to look in the mirror and look at ourselves first, because we're ambassadors. You can't enforce or ask someone to enforce something if your situation is jacked up, first and foremost. One thing that I observed tonight, this whole entire meeting, when Fresh Water Commission vote, with 2 people on the call and 1 person present, this impacts the whole neighborhood. The door should be busting open. Need to be busting open. Because quite frankly, I work hard on the few pennies that I make to try to make my representative look. Right now my yard looks jacked up. And so I take a sense of pride. I'm gonna give me my minute and then I'll shut up. So we can ordinance, we can put signs up, we can change laws, we can duplicate Tallahassee and county laws and ordinance, but until residents take a stand and stop doing, because right now, I guess you're right, they don't face no consequences. Why should I take care of my property when Councilman their property look like? And I'll just leave it at that. So I want to be professional. And you are so right, and I'm done. You're so right. Let me just get this out. So one to say we can talk of it, but we really do need to implement some things, and it's a culture. Again, residents need to understand or just be helped or guided, not forced, but guided to understand that take a sense of pride and do some things. And it's not a lot of money. I know people budgets are tight and everything, but it's not rocket science. Thank you. I'm done.
Okay. Vice Mayor, then if there's anyone else, Councilman Green, and then I'll go to the attorney after Councilman Green.
I too want to applaud you, President, because I was several times speaking to the manager about what we need to do to enhance our code enforcement. I had asked 6-8 months ago for a workshop so our residents can be informed on what their responsibilities are in our community, especially in regards to code enforcement. I spoke with our code enforcement officer about this as well. He agreed to participate in the workshop. Of course, COVID cut all of those plans in our last meeting. We made mention of re-engaging that process. Did we set a date for a community issues forum or a workshop that we're going to handle or discuss some of these issues so that the community at large can participate and be aware of?
We haven't set a date. But do we want a community issues forum or do we want a council workshop?
I really think a community issues forum so that the community will be actively involved. If we say a council workshop, to me, residents think, well, that's for the council. But I think the issue needs to be discussed openly with residents, whether it's over YouTube, Zoom, whatever, but it needs to be, they need to be aware that their participation is encouraged and preferred in a community issues forum that discusses these issues.
Okay. Councilwoman Green?
Ms. Smart, I've been in my house 30 years, and this is my first time in this chamber that I have ever heard a resident in this community come and make the statements you just said about the residents in the community. I agree with Councilman Smith, never. I applaud you. And then I want to say, I'm gonna talk about my street. You know what, I walk my dog, everybody knows I walk my dog every day. And it breaks my heart. And I walked today and I said, my street looks like a parking lot and a junkyard. Next to Mr. Ricketts, see, I believe in calling names. I have said over and over again, this man is just, it's unbelievable what you see in it, and how you can walk past it and nobody says anything hurts me. And then I'm going to ask you, Mr. Metcalf, it could be, this is not a rhetorical question, just a yes or no, because I know you all are tired of me bringing it up. Is this related to going back to when we discussed many times the boards that I asked you, when were we going to discuss, or when were you going to tell each one of us, or give us a discussion of what was, are these the boards, would they have anything to do with that?
I'm going to answer yes, but I do need to follow that up.
That's all I had to ask you.
I do need to follow that up with an explanation. The answer is yes.
It's 2 years.
Now, in regard to code enforcement, I believe at least a couple of times the vice mayor and I have sat down and had some discussions about code enforcement. So, yes.
And the reason I said that is I don't mean you can get anywhere if you want to. We don't need a workshop on that. All we need to do is do our jobs. And out there, and I'm insulted when you're going to say to me, we're going to have a workshop to talk about cleaning up the community. If we do our jobs, it'll answer her question. I just personally don't think we need a workshop. And that's to you, no one up here. But I just thank you for bringing that up.
Okay. Well, let me just say this, and I'm going to go to the attorney. Thank you. Yeah, I agree as well. One of the things, of course, that is so difficult to explain is the bureaucracy that exists around code enforcement. You know, a lot of times there are things going on, and as residents, it's not moving fast enough. Is anything being done? And so what I'm going to do is go to the attorney and just sort of walk us through code enforcement goes out, identify an issue, then what?
Well, it can go two ways, but there's a specific statutory process. So code enforcement is the driver of the bus. Just so we're clear, the board and liaison thing, that's a report back to council, not a directive to your code enforcement officer. Your code enforcement officer is tasked by your code with enforcing your code. So he would go out, identify a violation. It can be complaint driven. It could be just normal observation. He has the ability to issue a courtesy notice. If that's unsuccessful, he would then proceed to a formal notice of violation. That would give, in every instance except for a health, safety, welfare issue, that would give the respondent or the homeowner time to remedy or cure the issue. If within a certain time frame, if that's not cured, he would then set the matter for hearing before the special magistrate to actually come to hearing and get a formal finding of violation. Typically, additional time, depending on the nature of the violation, can be given to allow for the property owner to bring whatever the issue is in compliance with your town code. But it's a very set process. You, as the town, have semi-regular code enforcement hearings, but there is always code enforcement happening in the background, whether or not things get to hearing. As is the case in most jurisdictions, the goal of code enforcement is code compliance, not more of a punitive nature. If I could, Mayor, while I have just a second, your code does have many minimum property maintenance standard sections already that deal with, condition of the house, what can be in the yards, what can't be in the yards, where things can be. You have teeth there. You can certainly revise your codes. That's certainly within your purview as the council, but you do have code currently on the books that addresses some of the issues that I've heard tonight. So perhaps it's an enhanced enforcement opportunity. I don't want to speak to specific properties, but you do have many minimum property maintenance standards on the books.
Okay, thanks so much. Now, one of the things, and of course, and again, we apologize, and we're victims. Well, I'm sorry, wrong word. We're impacted by it, as well as maybe sometimes impacting our neighbors and so forth. And So one of the things we would hope that we could move processes real fast, but as the attorney stated, there's processes in place. And frustration. Let's be honest. Frustration happens during that process because it appears nothing is happening. One of the things, of course, too, and Ken and I talked about this, and perhaps this is the right time to bring it up. One of the things, of course, is that we have a code enforcement officer who's very competent. I'll say that on the record. I appreciate that he's very competent, qualified. There's an old axiom in sports: the best ability is availability. So one of the things then what we can do, and we have a responsibility and obligation to look at, that if indeed we want to be more proactive with our code enforcement, then what it means, to cut through the chase, is then that we look at a full-time code enforcement officer or bringing on a half-time person during the day. There's a budgetary impact. Right. So those are the things that we can kind of consider. Do we need another set of eyes out there? One of the things that Ken and I did, we had a staff person that we sort of looked at what is the best use of this person's abilities and time and all of that, and was moving toward that so that there was no budgetary impact. Well, that sort of fell apart for other reasons. But we're always looking at how do we go about attacking these issues that, for instance, that's being brought up tonight. So there's always a thought process going on. Specifically, as council, we would have to consider, do we want to bring on a full-time code enforcement officer and/or stay with what we got because we have somebody in the afternoon and then have a half-time position during the day. That's what we have to do. I think to begin to sort of tackle this be the first approach. Comments, questions?
Yes, I'm definitely in favor of additional eyes to be on site. Because I do think we need to have daytime eyes, and I may get concerned, does our present code enforcement officer have flex hours that we can do different times in town, or is that not available to us? The concern the conversation led to, well, there's a possibility for an additional staff, part-time, temporary, or some form funding may be available for that. I said if we can, I think we can push toward that, because I do think we need more eyes in the community.
Okay. Councilman Smith, and then we'll go to Ken. Okay.
I will bring from a question because I'm frustrated, and when I'm frustrated, I may get into saying something that I don't need to say.
No, this is the forum.
So,
I'm sorry, just before you do, Vice Mayor stepping up the desk for a moment. Councilman Smith?
Again, Mrs. Smart, you have really hit the nail on the head. You really have. And again, I'm human, and I'm frustrated that this is a channel-wide issue, a problem, or issue, or however you want to deliver the message. And we've done everything proper, backwards, sideways, getting code enforcement, writing, trying to hook the teeth, revising it. But the frustrating thing, and I'm going to say this, if you didn't hear me say it earlier, this is a town-wide problem. We have two people on the call and one in the audience. Not to be repetitive but redundant, I am so frustrated to the point where I want to just get a bullhorn and ride in the neighborhood and tell them, with the bullhorn, clean your property up, but that wouldn't be practical. And so, don't put that in me, but we talk workshops, we talk doing things in effect that should get the message across. But again, just like we had a lengthy discussion with a great presentation earlier with the Freshwater Commission about the raccoon issues. We, as a township, it impacts me. I spend a ton of money on paint and taking a rotted fascia board down and putting stone in front of my house and doing my yard. But in my neighbor Havisham, they chimney, beautiful quarter pond and beautiful paint job, professional down paint job. So I see movement But I also see, like you stated, Sanford and Son, Fred Sanford, and stuff in the legal docket that I know shouldn't be on that curb. So, I don't have the answers, but I'm in my power, whatever we can do as a township and council, we just got, and legally, we just gotta make it happen because it is getting ridiculous. We can't talk about 48 acres or 52 acres when we got residents looking like, who done it and what for? So again, you ought to be commended. I'm so glad you spoke up because it needed to be said. So my thing is to get beyond the saying and get into the action part of the doing. I don't have a crystal ball, but it ain't rocket science either. You take pride in your property, you know, coat of paint. I love Home Depot and Lowe's, and it's not budget busting. I have 3 car notes and a mortgage and utilities, but yet, and I have to have those, but yet, I'm constantly trying to, and I am succeeding. So, I haven't answered, but I just know something, I just needed to get that out. I don't want to get into,
Okay.
but I just needed to get that out of my chest, so thank you.
Okay, certainly. Ken, we're going to defer. Going to go to Councilman Green, and then we'll come right to you.
Thank you. Councilman Smith, you make me, what they say, don't do as I say, but do as I do. You are a good example to be a neighbor, and I don't know why you said that, and I'm not trying to flatter you, but your house and your yard and Mr. Owen's yard set examples, and you can tell from where you live, everybody around you, like they compete with you and Mr. Owens. Those people bought that house next to you, and you can see when you lead like that, they follow you. Now let me get to mine. Mr. Metcalf, remember I took a picture. I was going to bring this up under my comments. So now when I say this, I don't have to bring it up. And I'm so glad you came. I took a picture of the sidewalk this time, and I sent you a picture of the water. It's been sitting there for 2 solid years. And before I was elected, I took a picture. This is the second time I've taken a picture of it. And I asked you, where is the water coming from? And our poor people, and I mean in this neighborhood, we got high water bills. And that water has been sitting there on that sidewalk, and I'm going to say this, for 2 years. The sidewalk is green. And Mr. Town Manager, I'll ask you, where's it coming from? And this time when I took them last week, I asked you, the water sprinklers had, I don't know, but that's a good example. And wait, I'm finished. Now, where it is sitting is in front of Miss Ida Robbins' house. She just had her house done, and it's beautiful. But where that sidewalk is, it's filthy. The car has been sitting in that's where the parking lot, that's where the house burned down. That Mercedes has been sitting there, fenced in, I guess that's their property now. His house is nice, but next to his house, all the way down, it's like an industrial area. Because when you come in the entrance, you see Mr. Grocer right here, and that green, filthy, nasty sidewalk, the same place they had the bed mattresses up against the wall. It was the way it was looking, so people, it's like they said, I don't care, Miss Smart. And that's what started it. When it started looking like that, remember I started looking, now the people there, they don't care. Then that's what started it on my street. All you need is a few people to start it, and that's where it started. And it looks like an industrial area from Boardman, I'm talking about my street, all the way down. And the man there with the 3 trucks, and he planted all the trees around his house and garbage, so you can't see the garbage. And I am ashamed of, that part of, makes me want to move. You know, and so I am so glad you gave me a chance to vent. I have vented, so now when the mayor asks me if I have comments under my name, I don't have to say anything. So you gave me an opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, Ken?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Ms. Green, you did send me a picture. I don't think you sent me one prior to coming on council, but you did send me one in recent weeks.
Yeah, I took one last, I think I took one, I just took a picture of it.
You may have. I don't recall, but you did send me one within the last couple of weeks. So our utility director, Roosevelt Jones, and myself, along with one of our town workers, we went to the spot. It was dry when we went there, and we did happen to notice that there were a couple of other driveways where water had settled. The area that you're referring to, and you referred to the house that used to be there that burned down.
Mm-hmm.
The spot that you're referring to is in a dip that started their driveway. And we don't have any water leaking that we've been able to see. We do see the sprinklers going in the morning, though. Miss Robbins, for example, her sprinklers are going. We do get an occasional little bit of rain. But the day that we were over there, the area was dry. I got your picture, and I've seen the puddle on occasion, but we don't have, that we know of, we don't have anything, irrigation that the town owns that's leaking.
Mr. Metcalf, that's not a leak. I don't know what you're talking about. That water sits there. The reason, I'm not debating with you, but that sidewalk is green, mold, so you know it's not that's all I have to say, the sidewalk is green, so you know it's not sometime. It's been there like that for 2 years. I don't know what you and Roosevelt looked at, but if you want me to, I'll walk you there.
There was no water. We saw the area you were talking about. We went there and looked at it.
The sidewalk wasn't green with mold?
There was no water.
The sidewalk wasn't green with mold?
Ma'am, I don't recall if there was any green residue or mold or mildew.
Come back there tomorrow, I'll show it to you.
We didn't see any water.
Okay. All righty. Now, what side is the dip on? Is it on the resident side?
It is, where the house that burned years ago,
Yeah.
it's on that side.
It's on the property side, the owner
It's on
side.
the road side.
Our-
It's between the road and the sidewalk, right?
Somebody's paying the water bill.
All righty. And it could be possibly trace water. If there's an incline and somebody else is using it, it's like it kind of goes into the gully to go into that catch basin that it's now become. Okay. Now, and of course, and as Ms. Smart stated, and thank you again, and I think she wants solutions, and I think if we still have 2 persons on watching us, and all of our residents want solutions, so yes, if we, again, that's just a suggestion. I have to come up with solutions. I know we all got gripes, but what are the solutions to those? And that would be my recommendation. If there's others, feel free to get with Ken. I shared some other things with Ken as well, that, you know, not for public consumption at this point, that we might be able to do to help remedy some things as well. So feel free to get with Ken and just kind of float your ideas, and then we bring them back and see what we're able to do within the confines in which we can operate. Okay? All righty? All right, thanks again, Ms. Smart. We appreciate it. Righty? So if there is anything else? Ms. Smart, anything else? No? Okay.
I mean, just to answer that, I work with code enforcement, so I know that there's ways you have to approach this. So I'm just saying that even with the things that we have on the books, ordinances, let's enforce them. Let's enforce them. It's like, there was one neighbor that had a car in the yard with no tag on it. Now, I know that's illegal. But it went on for over 6 months. Now, if I saw it, why didn't code enforcement see it? You know, so is it that he's not allowed to enforce, or what is it? You know, even if we don't add anything else, let's enforce what we have. I mean, I read our ordinances. I see the violations. I know what they are. And I'm just asking, let's enforce. Like Minnie was saying. And I know her from my municipality, so that's why we calling about her. But we have things in place. And so, yeah, okay, so is there a friendly reminder? NOV, you know, let's let's do what we have to do, well, we have to clean things up. So that's
Yes, and all of those things we have in place. My point is that we have one hand doing it right now, two hands that can get it done much faster. And so I think if we sort of looked at a part-time position, but I feel, again, just kind of float all of the ideas and suggestions have with Ken in the interest of time. So we'll do that, and then we can bring back any suggestions, ideas that we might be able to implement, okay? Righty, if there's, at this time, the floor is still open to public comment, so if we have anybody online who has any comments, we'll allow the 40-second delay to see if there's any comments from those who are joining us online. Okay, alrighty, we've allowed the additional time and there's no additional public comment, so we'll close the floor to public comments. We'll now come to our administrative portion. Ken?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Town Council, thank you again for your time this evening.
Just can you say this move because someone said turn the sound up? Maybe they can't hear, I don't know, so they already said the sound was off at one time, but I asked them what sign they hear, because I know before, when I'm at home and I listen, you do get a feedback, so I was trying to clarify if it was indeed a feedback, but they never said anything, but now they're just saying, please turn the sound up.
Okay.
So I don't know if you guys can probably speak a little more clear, a little bit louder, so they can hear. Just to clarify.
Okay. Righty, so we'll try and move closer to the mic when we speak.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, Ken? Oh, thanks, I appreciate it.
That's why they tell you to turn it on.
Okay. Just for the record, the public comment section has been closed. We're now moving to our reports. Ken?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council, thank you again for your time this evening. Appreciate the couple of items we were able to clear up. Thank you very much. Ms. Smart, I appreciate your comments as well. And I think you and I have, at least by text, we had several conversations. I know you've had quite a time with some noise over the weekends, and I'm hoping that we resolve that very soon. But thank you for coming tonight. It's always good to talk. So, the first thing I want to talk about is I appreciate the one-on-ones. I think we have some good conversations. We're able to look at the agenda. I hope you feel like you have a lot more knowledge coming into the meetings because of that. We're definitely trying that. Through the one-on-ones, we've heard a lot of discussion. We've had a lot of discussion about our sewer situation and the idea of potentially tying into West Palm Beach at some point. So, with the council's blessing, at some point in the near future, we'll place that on the agenda for discussion. And so at that point, council can give staff some direction, and staff can also give council, lay out some specific steps, what we have to do to accomplish that, if that's in fact what council wants to do. And based on your one-on-ones, I'm getting the feeling that that's where we'd like to go. So in an upcoming agenda, upcoming meeting, we'll have a discussion and maybe even get a consensus and allow management to start piecing some stuff together that would get us there. And I know I'll stop because I know the attorney doesn't want to go too far into the sewer situation, and I get that, so I won't. Next thing is the Jeffrey and Sherwood connection to sewer. That's moving along well. So far, we have 5 properties that have connected. The residents are working well with the contractor, and I believe vice versa. So far, so good. I wanted to give many thanks to PBSO. They've been quite active with additional resources coming in. If you see your report, and maybe the sergeant can talk about this a little bit, they have been very active. They brought in of course, the street unit on several occasions. And I just wanted to say thank you. Been very cooperative on anything I've asked for. Over the weekends with some of these noise issues, you responded, so thank you. And Mr. Mayor, unless council has further guidance for me, that's my report.
All right, thank you so much. Any questions or comments for Ken? Thanks so much. Roddy, we'll go right to Woods at this time.
Sure.
I'm sorry, Sergeant Woods. I'm sorry, give you a proper.
As the town manager stated about the noise problems that we're suffering.
You gotta talk into the mic.
Hello.
Yeah, there we go.
I mean, I can step back and use my drill sergeant voice a little bit louder. We're having problems with the noise abatement here in the town. Unfortunately, some of the business owners here in the city are allowing people to congregate on their property. Law enforcement cannot be the offended party in a noise complaint. Unfortunately, the courts say I can't be offended. We're getting a lot of anonymous calls, but with anonymous calls, we have no teeth to enforce the laws and the statutes that we have. We have to have a named complainant. We have to have a sworn statement. We have to have somebody who's going to testify. We will notice them. We try to do education. I think we've done enough education. We've been out here on Friday and Saturday nights. I believe the education period's over with, and it's time to start addressing it with notices to appear in court. But once again, we have to have a named complaint. I can't be offended. Law enforcement has their hands tied. And we can't go after them in a code enforcement way either, because our service agreement forbids us from doing that. So I ask anybody, please, if we're not getting satisfaction on the weekends when we're calling into the sheriff's office, please to get with me and I'll address it. We've been out here many nights lately, some very late nights. We're taking guns and drugs off the street. So, and if there's any other questions, ma'am, I have 2 things for you after the meeting that you asked me to address. I'll get with you offline after the meeting to address those with you.
All righty. Well, thanks so much. We appreciate it, Sergeant. Any questions or comments for Sergeant Woods?
Yes, I got a question. Can you comment on what went on at the Sunoco station? Last week, I seen there was, I don't know how many deputies up there.
Yes, sir.
Yellow tape and all kinds of stuff.
Yes, sir. We've had everything from a murder up there this year, you know, lately, to other drug arrests. Lately, as the town manager said, we had 2 portions of what they call Operation Fahrenheit. In about a week's time period, we had over 100 deputies in here. We've made numerous arrests. You're also seeing some equipment being dispersed throughout the city. If you can give me the exact time and what you're talking about, because there were several different incidents there. So
I don't remember the exact date, but
right.
But I go early. I leave between 5 and 5:30 in the morning.
Yes, sir.
And
also, we've had West Palm into the city also, because if you notice, you see a lot of troopers lately. Please do not speed. But I don't know exactly what you're, if you can get with me, sir, and give me the date and time, I'll look that for you.
Okay.
And just to let you all know, we have stepped up proactivity with traffic enforcement. I think in the last 10 days, we're up to almost 500 tickets issued to people. Those are not warnings. Those are not, please get this fixed, have a nice night. Those are actual physical copies of citations being issued to people. We've tried the compliance through education. Now we're in the enforcement period of it. And you'll see more pieces of equipment here. Hate to say it, we're sitting in the parking lot with a laser. They see that you're speeding. They actually try to raise the speed to see how fast they go, and then they meet one of the deputies down the street who informs them they won the record.
Oh,
Thank you.
appreciate
You all
it.
have a good night.
Oh, thanks, and you do the same. Appreciate it. Okay, Amity?
Sure, thank you, Mayor. Just one quick update, and have to condition this on, I'm going to give you an update, but then I can't talk much more about it in this meeting. I can certainly call you and speak with you individually, but I did want to give you an update on the Riviera Beach utility dispute. The arbitration date has been set for May 21st, beginning at 9 a.m., and a full day has been slated. With that, because we are in what amounts to an open adversarial dispute, I don't want to speak any more about the matter on the record tonight, but I can call you individually after if you have particular questions.
Okay. Councilman Green?
This is I just wanted to ask a question for educational purposes because this is new to me. And you've told me that council people, we can't attend arbitration, right?
Let me call you after and speak with you about that. We have not had that discussion. We had a conversation about mediation, but let me call you after this meeting. Let me call you tomorrow morning and get your actual question.
No, I didn't have a question. I was just saying we can't. You told us we can't attend. We cannot attend arbitration.
No, I told you there was no attendance at mediation. This is the next step. So I'll call you tomorrow morning.
Oh,
yes, this is a different
okay.
step.
See, I'm
Thank
glad
you.
I said. I forgot what I was on that. Oh, and Mr. Mayor, I'd like to say to the council too. I'd like to. I just told Councilman McConnell. I'd like to know if he and I could switch seats so I can try to see if I can hear you better if I'm sitting here, because I can hear. I don't know why. It's weird. I can hear everybody up here. Even over there, but I cannot hear you. Maybe I'm deaf in the right ear. So if it's okay with you, if I switch seats to him, just to
no,
try and
that's,
see.
yeah, the staff, I have no issues.
Okay,
Staff
I
sort of
just want to
places
make sure everybody understand. I ask.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
staff does the placement, I'm fine. No, I sit where they tell me to sit.
So
They
I'd
do.
ask him first, is it okay if
I have no issues. No.
I'm
Okay.
asking him if I switch seats with him, is it okay?
I have no issues.
I am not asking you.
I'm just letting, he's looking at me, I have no issues.
I'm asking you.
Okay.
You're asking me, it doesn't matter to me.
Oh,
Okay, so we'll let
okay,
y'all
that's
work it
why
out. It's like teammates.
Since you
Yeah.
asked, can I push it with Vice Mayor?
We'll let y'all work it out. Okay. It's sort of like a new guy go to the team and he wants the number.
And you see, that's
Somebody
why I
else
did it,
asked.
you see what's happening now?
Okay.
I did it trying to be intelligent and professional and follow protocol. But they make a mockery out of everything. I always try to get along, and I will continue to do that,
Okay.
no matter what you all do.
Okay, so I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm sorry.
No
Let me
information needed.
clear. I stated I have no
Never mind.
issue, correct?
But thank you.
No issue. So that was the end of that. And then we
Okay.
talked about something else. Okay, so just for the record, I have no issue with placement. None. Okay? None.
Yeah, fun.
Okay? All righty. So we've had our report. We'll go to council now. Councilman Green, you have anything else?
No, sir.
Okay. Councilman McConnell?
Nope.
Okay. Councilman Smith? Okay. Vice Mayor?
No.
Sure.
Okay. I have nothing for the good of the order, so a motion to adjourn?
Well, move that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, aye? Aye. Pull same sign. Thanks so much. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Yeah, at this point, that's all
Have to
we
get-
can do at this point. So.
If you follow these instructions, I recommend